Hello and welcome to World of Tanks with me, Merimo. Today I'm going to be taking a look at the Skoda T40, the new Tier 6 Czechoslovakian medium tank, and I'm overall going to give you a basic idea of what you can expect, and as you can see in the background I've got one of my earlier games in it playing, so hopefully you'll be able to get somewhat of an idea of how the tank plays, what it's good at, what it's bad at, the good attributes and the mostly bad attributes, and hopefully it'll allow you to come some way into making your own mind on whether or not you want to buy it, whether or not it's worth getting, and if you're on the Asian and any other server that's not yet got it, whether or not you'll want to get it when it does come out. So the first thing that I want to talk about is the tank itself. I'm going to be talking about the hit points, the ways in which the tank is good and the ways in which the tank is bad. And I think it's important to credit the tank and the gun differently, just because the tank's main job in any game is to carry the gun around. And it's one thing to have a tank with an amazing gun, but it's another to have a absolutely terrible tank, but with a absolutely terrible gun. So, take for example the ARL V39. That is a terrible tank, but it has a very good gun, and pretty much everyone hates it. On the other hand, you've also got tanks like the Rheinmetall Borsig Waffenträger, and I don't think anyone could tell you that that's a good tank, but the gun is absolutely phenomenal, and that means that overall it plays as a phenomenal tank destroyer. So if we take a look at the T40, one of the first things that you'll notice is that the way in which the tank can accelerate and the way in which the tank can maneuver itself, even though it's got the German ancestors, it's actually pretty good. It seems to get up to its top speed relatively quickly, and I've never really had that much of a problem going over hills, going over bumps. It seems to be quite a mobile tank. The armour is unfortunately a completely different story. It's 60mm at the most, all around, and that literally just means that if something is aiming its gun at you, the moment it fires is the moment it penetrates. I just cannot explain anymore. The armor is just dreadful. I've had tier 6 light tanks fire high explosive shells and then penetrate. The armor is just dreadful. Other than that, the gun depression, I'm just taking that into account as part of the tank because it's more to do with the turret than it is to the gun. The gun depression is bad. I remember a game on Himmelsdorf where I was trying to aim over a ridge, and the gun depression was so poor that I was killed before I could even get my gun at such an angle that I could actually fire at them. So overall, good mobility, absolutely terrible armor, and absolutely terrible gun depression. If we move on to the gun aspect of the tank, it's not all that much better either, I'm afraid. The first thing is that the aiming time on paper is actually pretty good. It's 2.3 seconds. And generally, a tank with 2.3 seconds of aiming time is a tank that I would say aims relatively quickly. What I've noticed with the T40 though is that even though the supposed aim time is brilliant, the tank itself just seems to take forever to aim. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's the fact that moving slightly causes the aim to go worse than any other tank I've been in, but for some reason the aiming time just feels so much longer than 2.3 seconds. The other problem is that if you try and rush the shot, if you don't let it aim fully, you seem to miss 99% of all shots. You know, you can come around a corner, fire the gun, and even at like 50 meters away from the target, you'll miss. It's really quite terrible. The rate of fire, however, is something that sets the tank above the rest. A good tank to compare this to, because it's also premium, is the Japanese Tiger. And the reason for that is that the guns are pretty similar. However, the Skoda T40 has got a higher rate of fire. And considering the fact that it's got 220 damage, the Skoda's reload means that you're able to use the tank very effectively. It does very well when it comes into circumstances where it's not getting shot at, but it can repeatedly fire at enemy tanks. Now, I would say that the camouflage works well, but I've never actually used the camouflage. You'll notice that I gave it a camo net, that's to make up for the terrible armor, but I never actually found myself in a position where I could use camouflage. I always seemed to be in city maps, you know, in one position or another, or they were so close to me they were going to spot me whether I had good camo or bad camo. So unfortunately I can't really go anywhere to comment on the camouflage of the tank. Having said that, the permanent camouflage which you can buy for this Skoda T40 is among some of the best I've ever seen. I know this isn't something that many people will be interested in. The camouflage is generally a secondary aspect, but the permanent camouflage honestly looks really nice, and after having played the game you're watching, I went ahead and I bought myself permanent camouflage for it, because, you know, you should never sell a premium tank, ever. I understand there are people who do it, but I don't agree with them, and I think it's a stupid thing to do. Unfortunately, this tank does see tier 8 matchmaking. It was something I was hoping I wouldn't see, because the 8.8mm gun has only got 132mm of penetration. This means that if you get into anything above tier 7, you're going to run into problems penetrating. Even more unfortunate than that, the gold ammunition for this tank is heat ammo. Now, some of you may or may not know how penetration aspects work, but in almost all accounts, heat ammo is worse than APCR and AP. Some people prefer high explosive anti-tank, but the problem with it is that if you fire it at sloped armor, or you fire it at spaced armor, it tends to ricochet or just get absorbed by the spaced armor. So, having said all that, the most important thing about a premium tank is that it's able to make credits. And this tank certainly can. In an average game where I did about 1000 damage, and you know, you have to expect that 1000 damage at tier 6 is average. Just because, you know, you've got 700 hit points, you should be able to do about 1000. So overall, the credit making capability of the tank was particularly good. I ended up coming up with about 20,000 credits every single game that I managed to do about 1000 damage. Unfortunately, this isn't anywhere near the kind of things that you can expect in tier 8 tanks. If you've got a tier 8 premium, you tend to be making around 50, 60, 70,000 credits. But for a tier 6 premium tank, 20,000 credits is relatively reasonable. So, is this tank worth getting? I'm going to put this out to two kinds of people. If you're the kind of person that is going to go down the Czechoslovakian line, no matter whether or not the line is going to be good, if it's going to have a Clan Wars tank at the end of it, if you're going to go down it, regardless, I would say get the T40. If you're the kind of person that doesn't know how to use a tank with no armor, but is thinking about getting Skoda, I would say don't get it. My overall impressions of this tank were that it really needs a really good crew, and without a brilliant crew it just cannot perform well. So, out of a total possible score of 10, I'm going to give the Skoda a 7 out of 10. The gun was brilliant, the penetration was lacking, and the tank's overall performance outside of speed was lacking. If anyone's interested in what the crew looks like, I know again it's a secondary aspect just like the camouflage, but I thought it was worth saying. Some people like the crew. The crew looks very much like a World War I crew. You seem to have the sort of rounded warden-like helmets that people used to wear in Battle of Britain. So, I hope that goes to tell you a little bit about the Skoda T40. I hope you enjoyed the replay as well. And if you did enjoy this review and you did enjoy watching me play, then please give this a thumbs up and subscribe. Have a nice day.